think we're probably the only agency in the world that have ever done 6 show sponsorships in a close season. I'm not aware of anybody that's done it.
I actually put the head coach into the women's team at Plymouth Argyle this summer. Again, that was just like a real passion project for me and something that to look back on. I thought that was a really interesting one. And Marie, who's gone in there, has had an amazing start.
We need to get a deal for Barry. We have to get a deal for Barry. And anyway, he put me in touch with all the various different entities of Matchroom, PDC being one of them.
Well, welcome to the Deal Room with Sporting Group International and Sporting Jobs. My name's Ed. I'm going to be asking the questions as we discover the business behind sport. But the actual opinion and expert knowledge is going to come from these guys from Sporting Jobs and Sporting Group International. So Adrian, Harry and Ian. We should probably do some formal introductions before we officially get into the podcast. So Adrian, go on, smash your title out.
Group CEO, responsible for pretty much everything else that no one else wants to do. I'm only joking. No, yes, Group CEO, responsible for the general operations of all the businesses, finance, HR, sales, marketing, you name it, I do it.
Literally everything.
Milk monitor.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, how does that leave you, Harry? I mean,
I eat a lot of biscuits as well.
He puts up good wallpaper as well, to be fair.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Oh, this is where this comes from. I see. Okay. So Harry.
Yeah, so I'm Harry. I'm the recruitment director at Sporting Jobs, and I run the recruitment business from a day-to-day standpoint. We specialise in kind of board appointments, senior management roles, and then technical and performance roles across a range of sports. And yeah, we're turning 10 in February.
Yeah, of course, big milestone coming up as well. So Ian, what does that leave you to do, really? I mean, it feels like they've got it sewn up, haven't they?
Oh, they've got it all covered, obviously. So my name's Ian Dutton. I'm the UK Managing Director of Sporting Group International. We basically specialise in sponsorship acquisition, so we support rights holders, clubs from various different sports globally, because we've got offices across various territories in Europe and Asia, to help them with their sales outreach and partnership acquisition. So liaising with brands on a daily basis, and trying to find the why they match up and the right partner for a particular rights holder and a particular club and obviously execution from that perspective.
Which, I mean, we'll delve a little bit deeper into kind of your roles and also a little bit more about how you help the people who engage with Sporting Group International and, also Sporting Jobs as well. But I think this episode mainly is about discovering a little bit more about your background, how you kind of got to where you are today and understanding those sort of relationships that you've built over the years that you've been working together and with other people as well. I should say we are recording this at the Sporting Group International headquarters. So are we calling it HQ? Yeah.
HQ Towers, as I call it.
Absolutely. I mean, we should say as well, really, I mean, this is episode 1 of the podcast, The Deal Room. So what listeners, Harry, I mean, we had a long chat before the episode to sort of talk about what we want to share in this. What would you say you want listeners to get out of this episode?
Yeah, I think fundamentally we always want to try and meet people and be that sports teams, brands, companies that operate in sport. And I think we wanted to give people an opportunity to understand us, get a bit of our personality across, but also give like a real sort of open book perspective of the industry, things we work on. We pride ourselves on not being a kind of faceless corporate company. We're big personalities and we're kind of happy to give our opinions on things, really.
Ian, would you kind of echo that? Is that what you want from this?
I think Harry absolutely smashed it there, to be perfectly honest. I think it is showing the personal side of what we offer. And also, we've all been around the sport for a long time in various different ways. And, whilst we do have a lot of experience, we don't know everything. And I think this is important as well that, we get some really good debate out of some of these topics that we're doing. We don't always agree on everything, and you'll see that as we go through the podcast. But I think it's important, there's a lot of people that love sport, and we want to discuss those key topics and hopefully inspire and support people on the way as well. So, yeah.
Adrian, who would you say this is for then, specifically this podcast?
People who are aspiring to get into the industry, people that are in it, people that want to hear what we've got to say. I'm going to my 20th year next year in sport, so got quite a lot in the closet to tell people. I'm not too precious about what I tell them. I'd rather just be honest, frank. Give them some real kind of insights into how we operate, what we do day to day, what the highs and the lows, things that make us tick. It'll be great. We'll literally, hopefully people continue to watch and we can add some value.
And that's an interesting point to kind of run with, really, about 20 years in the industry. And obviously you're a founder of Sporting Group International as well. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Where did it all start for you? When did you first get into the world of sport?
Yeah, well, I started 2005. I was in the energy market before sport, so completely going from one extreme to the other. I was pretty bored of electricity. You can't touch it, you can't see it. It's pretty boring. But I learned a lot of my kind of like sales and marketing, traits through that industry. It was very cutthroat. I was responsible for field sales guys who were literally knocking doors, and ultimately, I just kind of woke up one day. I put myself into a position where I left the energy market. I worked at Centrica for about 8 years, and I moved into a new business that I set up. That failed. That was a big lesson learned. A lot of money I put in, my own personal money. I was like, we'll ever do that again? But you live and learn. And then I moved away from that and thought, you know what? If I'm going to do something, I'm going to work for someone. I'm going to do something I want to do and something I'm going to like. So sport came up. I was hoping that the advertisement that I applied for was Aston Villa, but unfortunately it was the arch rivals down the road, who was sort of the test of my family was a little bit, you're going to work for who? Anyway, so that was the history made, but had 5 excellent years there. It's where I met Ian. Some of the stories that came out from that's where obviously I met you in.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Birmingham.
What was your initial role when you first went into business?
I was sales manager. I remember sat in at a desk, literally throwing a list of paper with a load of people that needed to renew their boxes, their seasonal hospitality boxes. Right, crack on. And I got a team of people in front of me that didn't know me from Adam. They weren't particularly that well engaged in the early days. It was a real tough ask actually getting into that quite a cliquey environment, and people like looking at you saying, okay, well, let's see what you've got in the locker. And I think I remember in my first 3 days, I got a box holder to renew. It was a company called Westbourne Construction, I think it was. But literally made up. I was like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah. And they were all looking at me thinking, yeah, we can do this.
So what was your position when you ended up leaving Blues?
I left Birmingham as their head of commercial. So I literally responsible for all their commercial department, reporting directly into Karen Brady, which was an experience, a great experience. And she did ask me to go down to West Ham with her, but it was just at the time when I moved over to West Brom, which is my second role in sport. I was just tied to the region really, and I didn't fancy London. And I'd got my wife and I had got a newborn baby that we're like, God, really don't want to kind of up sticks. So made the decision to stay at West Brom, and I think I made the right decision.
And what role did you go in at West Brom, and what?
Sales and marketing director there. Literally took responsibility for all of the sales functions, marketing functions. I didn't have retail. I didn't have ticketing, which I didn't mind really. They weren't that particularly mind-blowing when it comes to revenue, but I think I took the commercial team from when I walked in 3 million. I think I walked out 15 million. So
wow,
it was pretty big growth.
And of course, you mentioned that's where you met Ian as well at Blues initially, which is where I know you both from. And I was trying to work this out on the way here, but that's 17 years ago or something like that.
It would have been, yeah. It would have been.
He's got a story to tell about me, and I hope he doesn't recite it. But
Ian's very much the Peter Pan of football. He still looks the same as when I met him 17 years ago.
I'll pay you later, Ed.
Yeah, we'll go with that. So, Ian, how did it all come about for you then? Were Blues your first sort of part of sport, first job in sport?
Yeah, I think it goes back to when I was about 3 or 4 years old, when my dad dragged me down to St Andrews kicking and screaming, and the rest is history, so to speak. I suppose it wasn't my first experience in sport. I've always loved sport, loved playing it, just loved football in general, really. But actually, my first dabble in sport was actually worked in south of France as a windsurfing instructor. Oh, yeah. So I was a bit of an Adonis back in the day, long blonde hair, nice tan, 6-pack, living it up on the beach. Called me Brad, that was my nickname. But no, it was that was my kind of like first step. I was actually teaching kids not just windsurfing but a lot of different activities, and that's how I evolved into sales, because I actually ended up working for the company that I work for here in the UK, a company called Acorn Adventure. Outstanding company, they really were, and worked in their sales team. Did very, very well. Saw a role come up at my beloved Blues for, I think it was a hospitality sales executive at the time. Yeah. And applied for it. Got through to the first stage. Sailed through the first stage of the interview. Got through to the second stage. And actually, I remember it was Adrian, and there was our HR director at the time, a lady called Joanne Alsop, lovely lady. And I got through like what I had to do for my second interview, and it was basically a presentation. I had to deliver a presentation. Anyway, I got very, very confused, as I did back then as a 22-year-old trying to find my way, and I actually thought they were presenting to me. So I turned up, sat there in the interview thinking, okay, I'm going to get a presentation here on everything about Birmingham City, what the role's all about, etc., etc. And they're like looking at me thinking, okay, are you ready to present your presentation?
Oh, wow.
Anyway, as I do, and as I've done a lot in my working career, got up, ad-libbed. But yeah, didn't get the job first time round, did I, Mr. Rice?
Apologies.
Oh, you were on that panel?
Yeah.
Oh,
Adrian was on the panel.
I
Adrian was the decision maker. Adrian was who I was going to be reporting to. Anyway, he kind of seen the lights a couple of weeks later. And I was at my parents' house actually at the time and got a phone call to say, look, you know, you were very, very close to getting the previous role. You stood out, you shone for us. And I ended up being welcomed into the commercial team, working alongside Mr. Wright. We never looked back.
And then rose through the ranks to, what were you by the time you left Blues?
Yeah, so I left Blues as managing director. So from 2022 through to 2024, April, as managing director of the football club.
Which we'll delve more into a little bit later. But Harry, I feel like we've left you right to the last. Your journey's a little bit different, I guess, really, because, I mean, you're representing Sporting Jobs here today, but, you know, recruitment, not your first rodeo doing this job. You've got quite a history in it, haven't you?
Yeah, so I managed to just kind of get onto a graduate scheme without being a graduate within Pertemps Network Group under a fabulous team there led by Matt Ellis. And over a period of time just sort of rose through the ranks from a trainee and graduate through to a senior consultant when I left to move and work within the JCB network for a number of years selling machines. Following that, I set up my own recruitment business with my best friend who ironically played football at Coventry City with, sort of completing the circle really. Following there, I had a call from a headhunter a few years into my role there, whereby everyone at Pertemps has been telling me that I've got to speak to you about this role. It's made for you. It's operating in sport. It's working in recruitment. We always knew you loved your football and watching live sport and so on and so forth. And turned up for my first interview with Adrian. I think he was on the golf course that day, but had a great chat to the receptionist and rearranged. And a couple of meetings later, I was thrilled to get started.
Terrible I am.
So first impressions then, Harry, when you actually finally got to meet Adrian when he wasn't on the golf course?
I'd worked in recruitment for nearly 7 or 8 years by then, and I had some really successful times and ran some really successful desks, but I couldn't really believe that there was a market for sports. I just assumed that football clubs and the sort of mass followings that they have would be able to put an advert out and maybe, you know, fill roles through their network. But I found that there was a real want and need from clubs and teams and rights holders for top recruitment, which naturally everyone has and everyone needs. And look, following now coming up to 3 years here, I think we've placed around 70 people in that time across 4 continents, 11 sports, in about 15 functions. So fingers crossed things are continuing to move in the right direction.
We've sort of dived into the sort of Sporting Jobs situation, but let's roll it back a bit. You mentioned it's the 10-year anniversary, Adrian, of founding the business in the first place. Is it very much the same business as when you started it, or have things evolved quite a lot over those 10 years?
It's not too dissimilar. A lot of people probably thought, why are you setting up 2 businesses in one, which effectively it was. You know, the recruitment function stood in its own. It had very different individuals in it, and we literally did try and run it as a separate entity, but still under the same umbrella as Sporting Group International as the main limited company. From a sponsorship perspective, that was the real hard yards. You know, that was a very much a feast and famine environment. You know, we went probably the first 3 years without really generating any significant revenue. So I was fortunate enough that I'd convinced some venture capitalists to back the business, to the tune of about £1 million, which has all been paid back, and they've received, significant dividends from that investment. So where we've ended up today is we have actually split the businesses now into 2 separate functions, and obviously Harry, running the recruitment business, now has his own venture. He's responsible for it. He has shares in it. He's controlling his own destiny, and I've got exactly the same ambitions for Ian. Ian is coming in, taking the reins for a business that I've run for a lot of years. And my scope was literally just to have that helicopter view, maybe open up some new territories. I've opened up Europe, I've opened up India, I'm looking at the US, but fundamentally it's making sure that the UK side of the business, which is like the fulcrum and the biggest cash generator, remains constant, and that's why I've hired Ian, because I know he's got the ability to stabilise it, to grow it, and I want to support him in that journey.
Was it quite obvious for you then that this was something you wanted to do? I mean, is this something you've been thinking about for a good few years before it happened?
Yeah, I'd sat the other side of the desk, of agencies, and I wasn't particularly, kind of wowed by anybody I dealt with, and that sounds quite harsh, but a lot of people were based out of London. I take the recruitment function as being a really prime example. I got regular phone calls. Oh, Manchester United want to see you for a director of hospitality. It's like, okay, great. Well, pop down to see us in London. So it's £130 on the train. It's a half day of my time to go and see them for half an hour for probably a role they won't put me in front of them. So I was just like, well, who is representing the kind of everybody from kind of like Watford up in terms of recruitment? And I couldn't put my finger on any agent. I was like, well, there's a gap straight away. And interestingly, I asked Harry to run some results of our hires we've done since our inception, and 70% of our hires come from the north.
Oh, right. Interesting.
So
okay.
we've actually done exactly what we said we were going to do. And then in the sponsorship space, I was just amazed by how many flaky people there were that would promise you, I've got this brand, I've got this, I've got that, right, put your money on it, we're going to do a deal. And literally, you phone them up and they're dead tone. It's gone. Right. Here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there are some big boys, the Sports 5, the Wassermans of the world. They're huge organisations. There's a middle market. We're occupying that middle market now, and that's great for us.
That's kind of the sweet spot, I suppose, really. Yeah, interesting. Okay. It's interesting you've seen it from both sides, I guess, really, because you've got obviously a lot of experience of negotiating these deals on behalf of football clubs, and now you sit across from them, kind of doing it.
Yeah, kind of know what they would expect from us as well. I think that's another really important part of when we set the companies up. Is if I was sat in that seat, what would I be expecting? I want someone to be ethical. Want someone to literally deliver, someone that's going to call me back, someone that's going to tell me if the deal's not going to happen, the reasons why, just all the basics really, which really surprised there were a lot of people out there that just didn't have that acumen.
Ian, coming to you then, I mean, obviously, I suppose you're the new boy really here, aren't you? How long have you been at...
I'm relatively new, but it's actually 18 months now. It's 18 months in October, I think, so there you go.
And based on that relationship, that knowing Adrian for so long, having worked together at Blues, was it always? Do you think it was always in the back of your mind you're probably going to work together?
We were always going to get the band back together, always. I mean, to be honest, it's probably been the best part of, before working at SGI, best part of 13, 14 years that I actually worked with Adrian. But we've always just kept in contact. We always had a fantastic working relationship. When we were at Birmingham, and ever since Adrian moved to West Brom, he's always been a bit of a mentor to me, if I'm perfectly honest. We've always kept in contact. We've always shared best practice, and that relationship has just grew, from a business relationship into a friendship. And I think obviously when I got that phone call, after 8 years, very successful years of SGI, and he wanted to grow and telling me the plans, the ambitions, the territories that wanted to open, it was just an absolute no-brainer. My passion, my love is creating real, meaningful, authentic storytelling partnerships. And it was a challenge at Birmingham. We were going through a lot of adversity, so it was a hard sell. But if you can sell it in a real compelling reason why, and give that reason why. And we delivered, and we were still very, very successful, still delivering on and exceeding KPIs and targets. And the fact that I can now do that, working for SGI, for multiple sports organisations across the world, working with so many different brands and various different levels, is fantastic.
How do you think then, and I don't know who wants to take this one, how do you think your experiences, quite varied, and work together on some level in different industries, how do you think your experiences complement each other in terms of creating sporting jobs and SGI as well?
I think the biggest thing as like a leadership team here is that I personally have a huge amount of trust in both Adrian and Ian. So yesterday was a great example of this. I was speaking to a football club, a chief exec of a football club, that they're looking commercially to explore stadium naming rights as a partnership, for example. And making an intro to Ian following that call was so easy to do, because I know that I can rely on Ian to go and meet the club, really take an understanding of the brief and what they're looking for. And I think, again, that sort of trust that we have to deliver across the different parts of the group is really important. So I'd probably highlight that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the huge benefit for me, there's a common saying, isn't there, your network is your net worth. We're all about building relationships. We just want to build as many real key relationships with rights holders, with brands, with just general people that want to get involved in sport and that can help us in any way, shape or form, work together, build the network. And then that just complements both of us. Quite often Harry will say, you want to go and speak to someone at X club and, they're such a great guy or girl, they'll really, really help you, really support you. And we do that the same way. We're doing it each week. So yeah, that's a really good one for us.
Adrian, is the kingpin, is that kind of where you see it as well?
Yeah, and a lot of people say, well, what's the synergy between having a recruitment business and a sponsorship business? And there's massive synergy. We were fortunate enough to do a deal for Villa, where we hired the head of partnerships. He went in, a guy called Dan Smith, now working in rugby. Dan was in no more than 6 months, and I'm making phone calls to him saying, right, we've got a shirt deal available for Villa if you want it. Should we, let's get going. And, we managed to crack the deal, which is like a utopia 360 for me, because we put him in, he trusted us, he understood what we stood for, and then all of a sudden he's getting a call from him from another division saying, we've got something that's actually going to make you look very good, you're going to learn a lot from it, and you're going to be putting a new sponsor on the front of Aston Villa's football shirt.
Yeah, that's a really good example of how it works so well, isn't it? And talking shirt sponsorship, we're going to talk more about that in episode 2, which I'm looking forward to getting into. And talking of those experiences that you've kind of done for you, Adrian, in the last 10 years, are there any particular deals that really stand out as milestones? And I know some of these things you can't necessarily talk about too much, but are there any details that you could share about deals that you go, that was a really key point for us?
Yeah, there's quite a few. Even this might sound a bit random, really, but believe it or not, the very first invoice that we wrote as a company back in 2017 was a replacement for me at West Brom.
Oh, okay.
And that was a real difficult thing for me to negotiate with the exiting board, because there was a new owner coming in, and the final decision wasn't with my former colleagues, it was with the new guard, as in they made the decision to come with us. So anyway, cut a long story short, Simon King, who ended up being the new sales and marketing at West Brom, came via me. Okay, so someone might say, well, he's part of your network, you've known him for years, why should you be getting paid for doing that? But it wasn't about that. It was the fact that it was kind of like the proof of concept is that you can move your close network into a fee-generating opportunity. And fundamentally, that's obviously Simon's now, chief commercial officer at Stoke. So, he's moved on and he'll be a chief exec one day. But I think milestone acquisitions for us, the Cazoo deal, that literally, I think we're probably the only agency in the world that have ever done, 6 show sponsorships in a closed season. I'm not aware of anybody that's done it. Happily be called out on the podcast, in the comments, wherever we post it. If someone can name another brand that's done 6 shirt deals in a season, closed season, I'd love to know who they are. Cazoo was a huge landmark for us, and that has come once again as a result of a very good relationship I had with the new owner of it. Fundamentally, getting invoices paid and generating invoices, any entrepreneur, kind of self-starter, founder, business owners, kind of first port of call. And sometimes you look back and think, how did we do that? And you just did. And it's like, that's life. And just get on with it.
Yeah. Harry, for you, I mean, quite often it's the first deal you do that when you come into a new job. Was that how it was for you?
I think I always look back fondly of like big appointments, so chief exec type, C-suite appointments. But I think one that I would just like to mention is as a business, we always try and look at the next thing that's happening in the industry. And, 2.5 years ago now, I was really looking at women's sports and where that was going to go. And look, we've seen the fruits of that over the last period. But I actually put the head coach into the women's team at Plymouth Argyle this summer. Again, that was just like a real passion project for me, and something that to look back on following those 2 years going, let's build a network there, let's understand where it's going. I thought that was a really interesting one and quite different from our day-to-day, which is typically, C-suite business appointments. But it worked the same. We spoke to 20, 30 women's female managers, declared a fantastic shortlist. And then, as I say, Marie, who's gone in there, has had an amazing start. I know that she's had a couple of really big wins so far, and got a shirt in the office, and they're my sort of team now in the women's game. You
must be like a proud parent, I suppose, when you play.
Yeah, no, too right. There's definitely like a feeling of that as well, and obviously my love for football away from sort of work as well, just kind of like a managerial appointment's always quite exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Ian, for you, as I say, kind of 18 months now, feet under the table. Is there a sort of key moment for you since you've joined SGI?
Yeah, there's a number of key moments. I think for me, from a deal perspective, we're a bit of a long-term play when it comes to sponsorship, and you'll know that it takes time, it takes patience. There's a process that you have to follow, and a lot of that starts with your network and your relationships. And I suppose a key moment of mine, a good friend of mine, is well-known TV presenter, sports TV presenter Gary Newbon. I've known for many, many years, time at Blues. And anyway, he happened to put me in touch with Barry Hearn, obviously chairman of Matchroom Sports. And anyway, he was looking for some sponsorship for various different opportunities. And me and Adrian actually went down to see him. Can't remember the hotel, but somewhere in London. Waldorf, that was it.
We bought the coffee as well, by the way.
Yeah, we did. And what a lovely man. Lovely man. But you know what? Straight to the point, very, very direct, knew exactly what he wanted. And, we knew from that day, do you know what? We need to get a deal for Barry. We have to get a deal for Barry. And anyway, he put me in touch with all the various different entities of Matchroom, PDC being one of them. Adam Perfect, what a fantastic operator, commercial director for the PDC. Got under the bonnet of what they're looking for, the various different packages. And anyway, spread that news far and wide like we do with the rest of the SGI team, in the various different territories. And anyway, to cut a long story short, we managed to do a deal with a huge brand called Hire, their HVAC division, as one of the main sponsors of the PDC World Cup of Darts. And yeah, I think that just shows you that was probably a good 9-10 month cycle. From start to finish, from having that first meeting with Barry right through to getting that deal. And they've just, I think there's some other big news on the way from that perspective as well, which I can't announce now. But yeah, I think that for me was a real moment of, real pride, because not only was it me, it was actually our wider team, which is hugely beneficial to us as an organisation.
Well, hopefully we'll get that future news sometime in a future episode.
Absolutely.
when the time is right to reveal that. So episode 2 we'll look forward to in terms of talking about front of shirt sponsorship and the challenges that a lot of Premier League clubs are going to be facing. But talking of the Premier League, this episode's going out end of September. I thought we could just finish on, and this is one of those questions that could age badly. So some of you might look bad in a few months' time, but who is going to win the Premier League? Because it's early days. It feels like it could go either way. Who wants to put their head above the parapet and start this one? Who's going to win it?
I can start it.
Go on, yeah.
You all right with that, Harry?
Yeah, I'd love you to.
I'm going to, perhaps a little bit controversial, I'm going to say Arsenal.
Oh, okay.
I just think that, they were there or thereabouts last season. I think Liverpool were fantastic. And I think it will be a 2-horse race, personally, between Liverpool and Arsenal. But I just think they've strengthened in the areas that they needed to strengthen this year. They're bringing in, the likes of Gyökeres. You can see he's already starting to score goals, and he'll only improve as he goes through. Complemented with Zubamendi. I just think they're defensively strong now. They've got an outstanding midfield. I think they'll do well in the Premier League, and I also think they'll be there or thereabouts in the Champions League as well. I think they gave PSG a real good run for their money last year, and I think they just lacked that cutting edge, which I think they might have now. So, yeah, for me, it's Arsenal.
Okay, and Ian can speak completely impartially. As a Blues fan, he's never had to worry about who's going to win the Premier League for his team. So we should put our cards on the table, actually. Harry, who's your team then?
I'm a Villa fan. Yeah,
Villa
so
fan.
I won't be picking them for the Premier League. I'd probably pick Liverpool. I love everything about Liverpool Football Club at the moment. We spoke with somebody in EDI and Premiership Club earlier this week and just mentioned that Liverpool are doing everything. They're 5 years ahead in that sort of space. I think it's the Red Way that they have as
the Red Way,
sort of CSR type sort of project there. But even little things, I spoke to a technical director of another Premier League club yesterday, and they mentioned about how Liverpool at the training ground now, they've got a coffee shop that everyone has to walk past every morning, and all of a sudden all the players are stopping with the staff and there's talking, and when they're winning games in last minutes, I think there's that community team spirit at the club that, for me, that'll take them to win the title this year.
Okay, we've got Arsenal, we've got Liverpool. Another Villa fan then. What are you going to go for, Ed?
Another Villa fan. I think Liverpool. I think the momentum and there's quite a high probability of for back-to-back. You look at people that win titles and they've felt it. They know what it feels like. They know what they've got to do it again. And obviously they've strengthened, and I think Arsenal are going to be a surprise package this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe do go Champions League. That might sound ridiculous, but I think Arteta's got to pick one horse. It's either let's go for the Champions League or go for the title.
They've got a lot of strength in depth, though.
Yeah,
they've built a real good squad, which I think can challenge in both. That's for sure.
I do agree. But as I say, I think the only thing that is holding Arsenal back is, they've never won a European cup of any description. So that's like a little monkey on the back that we've got to get rid of. And also they've not won the Premier League in a long time. So Arteta's got to pull it out of the bag.
Do you think pressure's on him this year then? He's really got to deliver.
I think Arsenal fans have been through a bit of a high and a low with him. Sometimes listen to what Piers Morgan, not always what he says I agree with, but around Arsenal, he's kind of like, I think he's been up, he's been down. I think all of a sudden this is probably the chance for him to like show some consistency, and actually when it is required, like that last minute, needs to score in the last couple of minutes to win a game. They got it in the locker.
But he's been using this term, which I really like. Actually, he doesn't call them substitutes now. He calls them finishers, which I actually really like because actually, do you know what? Substitutes are there to make that real impact, and you see so many now coming off the bench and scoring last minute goals. It's that's champions for you.
We will see how those predictions age.
Get your money on Man City, Ed.
No one's mentioned Man City. No one's mentioned Tottenham. Could they finally do it this year? I mean, no. A lot of shaking of the heads.
I think they'll do better. I think they'll do a hell of a lot better than did last year. But yeah, not quite Premier League contenders just yet.
Interesting season. Okay, that's a good point to leave episode 1 then of the Deal Room with Sporting Group International and Sporting Jobs. If you've got any questions for future episodes that you want to put to the guys, or you just want to connect with them, LinkedIn is absolutely the best place. So search for Sporting Group International and Sporting Jobs, and we'll catch you next time.